Hello, everybody. Robert Phoenix here, and welcome to the Sunday Night Chat, the Sunday Night Live stream, the Sunday Night Where It's At for all things astrological. As we look into the week and the weeks ahead and try to make heads and tails of what's happening with the planet from an astrological perspective. And it's going to kind of hang out for a little bit. Of course, you know who's here. That's right. He's ready to join in on the action. This is Jasper, the Astro cat, and a lot of people don't know this, but Jasper actually is a great source of inspiration and information too. Like, he is dialed in, right? This cat is dialed in. So when I start like riffing on astrology, I feel like Jasper and I are sort of becoming one in some ways. So not all the time, but there are moments where clearly he's in on the game. We got 3 people that showed up. Hello, all 3 of you, 4 of you now. As we gather together, we gather our forces here on a Sunday night with the Aquarian moon as we head towards newness, right? Newness of the moon. Hey, there's Jennifer. What's happening, Jennifer? What's going on? How about that Sag full moon? We're going to talk about that tonight. Hello, Nocateno. What up with you? Yeah, we're going to talk about that crazy Sag moon. No notifications. I don't know what to say about that, but you know where the place is. Hey, there's Marie. Happy Sunday. There's Paula. What's going on, Paula? Yeah, Jasper's wondering where you've all been. He just jumped right up here. He's like, okay, it's showtime. Is it kind of, I don't know. I don't think it's that weird, man. Had to go to your YouTube place. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes YouTube is good at letting people know. Sometimes it's not. Who knows? YouTube is like a crapshoot sometimes, an absolute crapshoot. Okay, we've gone about too far now. All right, you got the whisker in, and I think you're good to go. Hey, Shari, what's going on, Shari? Nice to see you here. You had a good Sag moon. Jennifer got a notification. Hey, there's Chris and Steve. What's going on? Hey, you should get Genghis to watch Jasper. Jasper's, I think, one of the more active cats on the internet, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's definitely involved in a way that maybe other cats may not be. Maybe too involved in some ways too. I think I'm going to have to ask him to maybe give his inspiration from another part of the studio here. By the way, if you go to my website, there are 2 charts on my website, robertphoenix.com, and those are the charts we're going to be pretty much working off of tonight. Of course, we're going to have the chart of the moment, which we always put in on Sunday night to find out where things are headed, and how we can best navigate them. I'll be doing a course, a weekend seminar out in just outside of Philadelphia. Watch Balfour based on recognition on this. Oh, really? That's interesting. I think Battlefield Earth is one of the best worst movies of all time. It is one of the best worst movies, and I think that there's some interesting kind of hidden knowledge buried deeply in Battlefield Earth. But I think it's kind of a brilliant, terrible film in its own way. I'll tell you guys an L. Ron Hubbard story. Then I saw Ron is Sag rising. Yeah, Pisces Sun Sag rising. He had to start his own religion, right? Pisces Sun Sag rising. That's a total religion starter. So back in the day when Ron was still running around, he was really jealous of Star Wars and the fame and the acclaim and the money that Star Wars made. So he decided he was going to put together a film, like a science fiction film, and shoot it in the desert. What's up, cheeky monkey? He shot, so he got a bunch of actors and he got a bunch of props and probably not much of a script. And they went out into the desert to shoot this science fiction movie with L. Ron Hubbard directing. It basically turned into a porn film. They were all just like screwing in the desert and stuff. Needless to say, it never made it to never never made it to the screen. I think these guys who are authors and publishers have very mixed kinds of bags and track records when it comes to doing movies. Another one that comes to mind was Bob Guccione, his version of Caligula, which was basically another kind of uber violent and erotic romp through Roman history, starring Malcolm McDowell. Not a lot of people talk about Caligula anymore, but at that time when it came out, it got a lot of press, and then the press went away pretty quickly. Yeah, so that full moon. Why don't we talk a little bit about that full moon? Because I still have her chart up, and I want to do a kind of a larger, maybe a more kind of in-depth video with Roseanne Barr. What's really interesting is Roseanne is a Scorpio. Okay, she was born on November 3rd, and she starts this firestorm. And the firestorm has to deal with Valerie Jarrett. There's two pieces to that Twitter storm with Roseanne. And one piece was, of course, she was basically saying that George Soros was a Nazi. And that was, when he was young, he helped the Nazis, and he helped the Nazis confiscate property from Hungarian Jews. This is what happened. He admitted it, said he actually enjoyed it, gave him great pleasure. He actually sacrificed any kind of character, empathy, morality, because, somebody else, if he didn't do it, somebody else will. And it led him, it was a pivotal moment. He talked about it on a CBS interview one time. So she brought it up. And of course, there was a furor over that. Isn't it interesting to say furor, and it sounds like furor? It's like, I never really made that connection before. Furor, Nazi, Soros. Anyway, so that part is actually not only plausible but historical fact. But then she comes in with the infamous Valerie Jarrett reference to her being a monkey, a cross between a monkey and a Muslim. What's interesting about Valerie Jarrett is that Valerie Jarrett is a Scorpio as well. So we have Valerie Jarrett, Scorpio. We had Roseanne Barr, a Scorpio. And then the third party that kind of wanders in to this catfight, although it wasn't a catfight on Valerie Jarrett's side yet, was Samantha Bee. And what is Samantha Bee? She's a Scorpio as well. So we had three Scorpio women kind of involved in this trifecta of public debates, and not a very, how should we say this, classy debate. And that's all out the window now. Everything is kind of out the window in terms of etiquette, decorum. The only thing that keeps the etiquette and decorum from just completely going off the rails at this point is sponsors. Because once sponsors, caught a little whiff of Samantha Bee's act, they were getting ready to leave her show. Whether you like Ivanka Trump or whether you like Donald Trump or not, like, you don't call somebody a cunt. Sorry. I mean, it may have a different terminology in England, and cunt may be like asshole. Like you're an asshole. It's kind of the same thing in some ways in England. So Auto Trader was on its way out, and State Farm, which is a really, really big sponsor. Like, you turn on your TV, State Farm is everywhere. The insurance companies, I think, right outside of the big pharma companies, I think they're right behind them in terms of advertising. It's probably big pharma, insurance, and then probably automobiles. Though I think those are the top three, if I'm not mistaken. So State Farm was pulling out. So all of a sudden now, Samantha Bee, with all of her swagger, decides that, well, I better apologize, because she wanted to keep her show. You see, there's no such thing as free speech because free speech is attached with money. It's attached with money. In that sense, now, if you want to risk your job, if you want to risk people paying you money, you want to risk people liking you and going to your YouTube videos, well, then you can take some liberties with free speech, but you'll have to bear the consequences. That's the world we live in. This is Mr. Pragmatic Virgo sharing that with you. And that's not such a bad thing because it gets you it really wraps your head around how important, how actually special it is because of the price, right, that many people have to pay for it. Now, they'll say that, well, the people on the left don't have to pay that price. Well, that could be true. That could be true. It's really interesting. Elon Musk, right around the same week. Last week was a very interesting week in terms of this whole free speech thing. Elon Musk came out and said, well, you know who runs the media? And it was like, the hornets, the bot hornets were descending. Like, oh, who is it? Come on. Crack it up, because they all were really, really, really invested in being able to call Elon Musk anti-Semitic. Okay, so he was like kind of on the verge there, right? He was pushing. Elon Musk was pushing the envelope a little bit. So last week was a week that was kind of dominated by people, saying what they thought or saying what they felt, in as much as it might not have been maybe the most tactful, right? That's the way it was with that Sag moon. It was really powerful, like really on fire. So I went out and I did my shows last week, and I caught a lot of heat, especially for the Tommy Robinson stuff. And Tommy Robinson, I'm going to rectify his chart. I don't know his birth time, but I would bet you that Tommy Robinson is probably an Aquarius rising. Okay, maybe we should do this. Why don't we do this as like a in the moment kind of exercise? So we'll go back to Roseanne, and then tonight we're going to look at the charts for the upcoming summit. I've got the summit chart, 10 o'clock in the morning, give or take, half an hour. Usually these things start around 10. Not too late, not too early, probably about 10. So I have the chart on my website, robertphoenix.com, where you can look at the summit chart. It's 10 o'clock on the 15th of June in Singapore. Now, excuse me, I also have the Synastry chart with Trump. So we're going to look at Trump's chart and the summit chart. We don't really have a chart for our pal, Mr. Kim Jong-un, but we can go with these two charts and we can derive some information. Why don't we do this? Let's do this as kind of an exercise together. So here's what I'm thinking. Let's go to astro.com if you can. If you can multitask, great. If you can't, that's fine too, but you'll follow along here. So what I'm going to try to do is a bit of rectification so that you people might be able to understand real time how you can maybe get closer to a potential birth time when you don't have one, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to astro.com, and I'm going to start a chart. Actually, I'm maxed on my charts, so I have to take somebody. What's really interesting? I only keep 100 charts on file at any given time, and I would say 8 times out of 10, when I pull a chart, within a week, that person is contacting me and wants a reading. It's, you think it's really strange. Maybe it's not. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and we're going to enter a birth data entry for Tommy Robinson. So we got Tommy, last name, I guess, Stephen Lennon. Can we call him Stephen Lennon? Okay, so now here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into his Wikipedia page just to grab some basic and raw data, okay? So I'm going to go into his Wikipedia page right now, and I'm going to look at, okay, so he was born on the 27th of November, 1982. So he's not a Scorpio, but he's got 2 planets in Scorpio, which you're going to see, okay? So Luton, the United Kingdom, is going to be his place of birth. So November 27th, 1982. So I'm going to go into Astro and I'm going to enter in November 27, 1982. Okay. And the town is going to be Luton. Luton, Luton. All right, now the time we're gonna sort that out. So usually when I start with a rectified chart, I'll usually start at 6 a.m. because that gets us really close to the sunrise time. Okay, but we're gonna change that, and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna change that tonight because this is my kind of theory and feeling about Tommy Robinson, the chart rectification. Now, I can be completely wrong. That's okay. I am going on events and instincts and trying to put this together from an astrological perspective. So here we go. All right, so if we look at 6 a.m. on the 27th of November, 1982, Scorpio is on the ascendant. But here's what I want. I want to find Aquarius close to the ascendant, and I actually want to see Saturn beginning to go into the 12th house in Capricorn. And there's a reason why. I'm going to share with you why. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the birth data, and I'm going to move his chart time up. Hold on a second. I'm going to move his chart time up by a couple of hours because I want that ascendant to go from Scorpio to Aquarius. So I'm going to move it up 3 hours, roughly 3 signs, right? So let's put it at 9 a.m. Let's see where we are at 9 a.m. Okay, we're getting close. We have Sag on the ascendant. Okay, so we've gone almost a sign and a half. These are now, because he's born in the northern hemisphere, the houses, some of the houses get bigger, some of the houses get smaller, and certainly we have some interception going on. So let's go ahead and make it, we're going to edit the birth data again. Let's get it to around 11 a.m. Okay, we're getting closer. We've almost got Sag on the midheaven. Okay, we have Sun on the midheaven, getting real super close here. That would be Capricorn. I'm actually liking this time, to be honest with you. I'm actually kind of liking this time. This is not a bad time. I'm looking at roughly 11 a.m. with all that Sag up in the 10th house and Jupiter in the 9th house. Okay, I think we're getting closer to something. So I'm going to tweak it just a little bit more, and I'm going to get it to roughly, let's go like 11, say 11:15. Let's see where we are at 11:15. Yeah. Okay, so let's do 11:15. Now I'm going to try to make a case for his birth time, being right around like this time. Okay. All right. I think we're onto something here. All right. So what I have now for Tommy Robinson is 24 degrees Capricorn ascending. Okay. I might even change it just a little bit, just a tad, just a bit more, and I'll tell you why. So why don't let's do this. We're going to edit the birth data, and we're going to get into, let's do it around, how about around 11:25 a.m. Let's change that. Okay. All right. I think we're super close here. I think we're right. I think we're right there pretty much. All right. Okay. So I'm looking at around 11:25, which would put him at 27 Capricorn on the ascendant. But the part that I'm looking for here or at here is Aquarius in the first house. And that's, slightly rebellious, Uranian, ruled by Uranus. It's kind of a multimedia sort of, vibe, presence, but it's also intercepted. And so what we see here is we see Capricorn on the ascendant, and then Mars in the 12th house. I may want to change this just a little bit. Let me just tweak this. I want to get it around like 11. I think we're at around 11:21. Let's do that. 11:21 a.m. I think about 11:21. Just want to change it just a little bit. See, now we're kind of sculpting the chart and sculpting the time. And there's a reason why I wanted to get it to around 11:21. And the reason is I want to get Mars just slightly closer to the ascendant because he's a fairly combative person, right? Mars tends to be confrontational. And with Capricorn, it's a weird mix, right? Because on the one hand, you would think that Capricorn rising would make a person be more structured, ordered, and maybe a bit more conforming in some ways. But when we've got that intercepted house with Aquarius there, beneath that cusp or that of the ascendant is a more radical orientation with Tommy Robinson. Okay, so the reason why I'm looking at this time is because of the placement of Saturn. Now, he's just been in jail for 13 months. So what I'm looking at here is Saturn right at about like 5 degrees, Capricorn at about 5 degrees in his 12th house. That's where his 12th house is. And Saturn is retrograde. Remember that. He was already like convicted once. And I don't think he did any jail time, but his sentence was suspended. And no, I take that back. It wasn't suspended. It was, he was on probation. And he was on probation for 13 months. So when we look at Saturn going retrograde back into his 12th house, well, it's already in his 12th house, but it's kind of right there, right around 5 degrees, right at the edge of the 12th house. A little bit further, because I think Saturn was at what, like 7 degrees. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Saturn gets, technically out of his 12th house. Like, will he get out of prison? Or will he get out of prison when Saturn moves forward? If Saturn moves forward, he actually might stay in prison. He's got a shot. Like, if Tommy Robinson wants to get out of prison, whoever is really behind him and wants him to somehow get out will use all the pressure they can, and it will be that Saturn retrograde and go back into the 11th house. But the bottom line is, what we're trying to do is establish a time. Now, look at his midheaven. It's where the Sun, Uranus, Mercury, and Venus, they're all in the 10th house. To me, this is actually a pretty appropriate fit for somebody who's in the limelight, Sagittarian, out there. That midheaven is at 29 Scorpio. So that's actually important, okay? Because he was told not to do what he did. Now, you can make a case where, well, people knew who the names were, they didn't waste any time. But the bottom line was he knew that he wasn't supposed to do that, right? To me, that's like really scorpionic. It's fixed. And this is what Scorpios do, is they wind up at times being involved in something quite self-destructive. You know the story of the scorpion. If you don't know it, I'll just share it briefly. It's the scorpion and the frog, and they're hanging out on the side of the river. And the scorpion says to the frog, he says, "Hey, frog, I really want to get to the side of the river, but if I get over there, I try to get in the water, I'm going to drown." And the frog says, "Well, nothing I can do about that." He says, "Well, yeah, there is something you can do about it. Mr. Frog, why don't you just give me a ride on your back, because you can swim." And then he looks at you, "You're a scorpion. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to have you on my back. You're going to sting me." He says, No. I promise I won't sting you." So he was very persuasive, and Scorpios can be persuasive. So the frog says, "Okay, get on board." And there was no deal. The frog didn't even cut a deal. "Okay, when we get to the other side, what are you going to do for me, Mr. Scorpio?" The frog is he kind of gets what he deserves in some ways. So they're swimming out, and he's about halfway through across the river. And all of a sudden he feels this spike puncture his, watertight skin, and he feels these poisons secreting all through his body. He knows that he's been stung by the scorpion. And he looks back, and he's got this look on his face, and he says to the scorpion, he says, "Why did you do that? You're going to kill us both." And he said, "I know. I can't help myself. It's my nature." There's your Scorpio tale for the night. So with 29 degrees on the midheaven, anaretic degree, Vix degree, right? I think he's going to be involved in some kind of scorpionic act where he's actually going to, get out there and basically do what he did. Now, at that time, his sun is at 4 degrees. So the moon was actually moving across from the ninth house onto his ascendant, onto his sun. With the full moon on his sun. Boom, there you go. 10th house for all the world to see. And he's got a ton of Sagittarius in his chart. The young man is missing some elements here. The biggest one is Earth. Doesn't have a lot of Earth. And he doesn't have a lot of water. And the water he does have is Jupiter and Scorpio. And it's in the 9th house. Well, that's actually a really interesting position for Jupiter, correct? Because Tommy Robinson really, really loves the Holy Land. And he's traveled there at least 3 times. And of course, you may have seen him on a picture a picture of him on a tank in the Golan Heights with a machine gun. That's Jupiter 9th house. That's other countries, other lands, and that Jupiter's in sextile with Mars, machine gun. Now, there's hidden enemies, obviously, with Mars in the 12th house. And this guy's got a temper. Tommy's got a temper. Mars square Pluto, Mars square Moon, super short fuse, not a lot of Earth. The Earth that is there, again, based on the time of the ascendant, is going to be Capricorn. And then it's got Mars hidden. So I actually like Mars in Capricorn. Get a lot done. It's a sign. It's an aspect of hard work and commitment and endurance. But it's hidden, again, in the 12th house. So where is the Earth going to come from in this chart? It's not really going to come from any other place, right? So he's not grounded. He's got his true node, he's got Chiron. He has Chiron in Taurus, which is interesting, right? Because now Uranus is kind of around his 3rd house, and it's wreaking havoc with sort of the world around him and communication. But he doesn't have, he just does not have a lot of Earth. And people that don't, and this is like it's submerged Earth with Mars and Capricorn. The Capricorn ascendant, but later degree, 1st house dominated by intercepted Aquarius. And then the 2nd house actually starting at the final degrees of Pisces. And then the only other Earth here, Chiron, Taurus, 3rd house. The true node in Cancer at 4 degrees. And the south node is in the 12th house. So it's right there, kind of at the edge of the 5th and the 6th. And, I think on some level, he probably cares because people with true node in Cancer tend to want to care. I mean, that's part of the experience, right? Is caring and bonding and nurturing and healing and fixing. That's what they're here to do. It's what they're here to do. It's an important kind of emotional kind of plank in his chart. But, he's all up. He's all up in the 8th, 9th, and 10th houses. And even with Neptune in the 11th house, which is essentially social media, Neptune there is quite interesting because you can get a wide array and a wide kind of, splay of opinions on Tommy Robinson. It's very Neptunian, right? He's a hero. He's a nationalist. He's a freedom fighter. He's a free speecher. And then you get the other side, which is he's a fake. He's a phony. He's a fraud. He works for, fill in the blank, right? I mean, it's a really interesting kind of Neptunian reality in the 11th house. It's hard to get a hold of. Jeff Rance did an interview with David Icke, which I listened to the other night. Pretty good interview. David Icke's got this new book coming out. It sounds like it might be one of his best books. It's interesting watching Icke change and evolve. And you can see where he's kind of going with, and I think this is going to be the future trend And I'm going to get back to this when we get into the duality trip with the three Scorpios, right? Valerie Jarrett, Roseanne Barr, and Samantha Bee. The three stingers. Interesting, they're all three Scorpios, right? They're all kind of clustered a little bit. I mean, Roseanne Barr's son is actually closer to Valerie Jarrett's son. And we'll get there in a second. But David Icke was talking about how, this is a time where, this is it. We're on the clock, and we've either got to change and radically change the system ourselves, or we're gonna lose this thing. We're gonna lose the plot. And I actually think he's kind of right. But there are other ways in which maybe he's not quite seeing the full plot. And my piece now is for people to get involved with their lives, to get involved with growing things, building things. It's funny. I just invested. I think my next Sunday Night live stream I'll do for my porch. Like, I've really invested in my porch as like an ecosystem. Excuse me. I'm growing vegetables out there. Got a really cool plant, feeding hummingbirds. I'm going to plant some herbs out there. This is all just a patio, right? And then tomorrow night, I'm going to jump in on the fluoride situation here in Fredericksburg. And I think a combination of these things are really going to hopefully make a difference. And if more people can pull away from the duality circus, which I think we're starting to see now, because people are starting to get really burnt out on the he said, she said, he said, she said. It's just getting to be way toxic. And like, unless you're really looking to go light a torch and go burn somebody's house down, right? I don't think that's an arena that ultimately is going to give us the best value for our intention. I think that it's time for a course correct. And that's what some of my work in astrology is going to take on over the course of the next few months, because it became very clear to me, and I've done thousands and thousands of charts. Malcolm, what's his name? The Outliers guy. It'll come to me. Steve will know. Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell talks about when you do something 10,000 times, like you get it, right? You've done it. You've reached this kind of quantum moment, this apotheosis of awareness and consciousness. And I'm probably getting close to about 10,000 charts. I'm getting close. Not quite there yet. I would say I'm probably around like high sixes, to be honest with you. Seriously honest with you. So if that's the case, then I'm starting to get into the kind of the inner chamber of astrology. And I'm getting clearer and clearer on this fact that astrology is an amazing tool to live your life. It's an amazing tool as a map and as a navigational system. And it's an amazing tool to do inner work with. It's a fascinating compendium of influence and confluence. But I also think that ultimately that astrology leads us to transcendence. That at some point, we go off the chart. And I think that's where ultimately it leads us. Now, how many of us can get to that point of transcendence? Well, I guess we're going to find out fairly soon. Well, perhaps. But anyway, that's where I'm taking my work. So it's astrology as a life map, as a life chart, as a process, and then as a point of transcendence. And I think this is going to be astrology's time. And we're going to get into some of that tonight when we look at this summit with Kim and the Orange Man. Anyway, there's Tommy Robinson's chart, I believe, rectified. And if you spend time with it and check it out and look at it, and as some of you in the chat room are astrology heads, feel free to play with it. Just because I said it at this time doesn't mean it's gospel. It doesn't mean it's gospel at all. There are other astrologers who have different kinds of rectifications. And then you talk about it, you look at them, and you put them together. So, well, this one kind of fits. Like, I could see Tommy Robinson being a Gemini rising. But it's the fact that Saturn went retrograde in his 12th house. And he's going to have Saturn in his 12th house for, the next 2 years, which almost encompasses. By the way, if he's still in there in January of next year, he might not make it out because he's got Saturn crossing Mars in the 12th house, and that's going to square Pluto, and that's going to square the moon. So just a word to the wise, caveat emptor. Let me just check in the chat room. Let's get some feedback on the rectification process. How do you guys feel about that rectification? Did you like connect with what I was doing there? Did you see what I was doing? Let's see what we got here. What we got? Sorry, guys. Thank you, Maury. Let's see. Hi, hey, BB. Hi, BB. How are you? Your YouTube video with Og Velez got a lot of views. I saw that. But it should be remembered by anyone dealing with Plutonians. The Scorpios thing that's powerful. It's Aesop's fable. Could be. I think it might be Aesop. I heard it on a Quentin Tarantino movie. How's that for referencing? There's Sue's. I'm trying to do it for a friend of mine. Yeah, Sally's into the solar arcs are shorter. They're very interesting. So did you guys like check in with that process about rectification? Did you see what I did? So if somebody doesn't know their birth time, you could look at events at a certain time, right? Yes, Heather says Dion Fortune wrote that astrology is the diagnosis. I would totally agree with that. Even Ptolemy, who is the founder of Western astrology, said astrology wasn't everything. You had to take into account other things. You had to take into account culture and family placement, and when you did that, then you could like create a bigger piece. So, but it's really a very, very fascinating tool. Astrology is. Okay, so why don't we do this? I do want to go to the Roseanne chart, and I don't have it on my website. Okay. Let's see. Nocatino says it's a good rectification. I think it's a pretty good rectification, actually. So let's go over to the Roseanne chart, which you can find, by the way, on, what is it, Astro theme, okay, Astro theme. So Roseanne was born November 3rd, Samantha B, October 25th, and Val Jarrett, November 15th. It's the tale of three scorpions. Am I right? So interestingly enough, Roseanne's sun is at 11 degrees Scorpio, 22 minutes. So there's an 11-22 kind of energy and vibe with Roseanne. And her birth path apparently is a 22. She's not a very tall person. She's 5'4". Jasper has decided he wanted to dig in a little bit. She's 5'4", and you can see where she's with her current guy, and he towers over her. She's diminutive. And what's fascinating, and I've been kind of on Roseanne in this whole process for the last week because for a number of different reasons. But when you actually see her and how small she is, she doesn't quite match up with I think she actually has a lot of power. And I haven't said that over the course of the last week because I've just been going through this process of that tweet and what it's done and and how it's impacted people and it's just not been great. Now she's completely out of it. She's begging for her show, and they may go on without her, by the way. But she's a water dragon as well. She's born in 1952, so she's a Scorpio, and she's got a birth path, 22 birth path, and she's a water. So she's got some juice. Roseanne's got some personal power. Right now, here's the deal: Jupiter has been on and around her sun for a lot of the springtime, going back into late winter like the sun. Well, okay. So Jupiter goes to 13 degrees retrograde, goes back to 13. So it got up to what, about 27, 20, 26? I think it was 26. So that means that Jupiter was very close to her midheaven. And that would indicate her professional resurrection, right? When Jupiter comes to the midheaven, good things happen. There's expansion, there's opportunity, there's possibility. Like, that's the nature of Jupiter. And she's got that 28-degree Scorpio midheaven, which ironically enough puts that 1 degree off of the midheaven that we actually rectified Tommy Robinson's chart for, at 29 Scorpio. So the Jupiter reached this like crescendo, getting very close to her midheaven, and then went retrograde. And when it went retrograde, it went back over and was in opposition, I believe at the time, let me get the ephemeris out, with her natal Jupiter in Taurus. So we have a Jupiter-Jupiter opposition. And her natal Jupiter is retrograde anyway. So this is somebody who has had, and Jupiter is in its own sign in Taurus. And so she's had like a number, I think at least 2, perhaps 3 events in her life where she's experienced kind of largesse. You know, there was the run up in the first like iteration of Roseanne, and she was incredibly popular. And then she did that thing at the baseball stadium in San Diego. She grabbed her crotch. Okay. And then there was the decrease. And I think she had a little tiny increase between then and now, where she had a reality show that she was doing. And then there's kind of this latest one. So I think she's got through like, say, 2.5 of these kinds of scorpionic resurrections. And it's the Jupiter-Jupiter opposition, her Jupiter retrograde, where things can get theoretically taken away from you with the Jupiter retrograde. And where's Jupiter? It's in her 3rd house, which is communication. And so it's expansive. Or boy, Jupiter's expansive in the 3rd house. He'll say anything in the 3rd house, right? Ruled by Saturn. But again, retrograde. So you have the Jupiter-Jupiter opposition basically igniting her. The 9th house is like ideas, philosophies. That's the 9th house. And when we get into stuff like, look, I love all the signs. A lot of people say, oh, you're just too hard on Geminis. We know you don't. Look, I think Gemini is fascinating. I totally think Gemini is a fascinating sign. I think somebody with a Gemini life and a Gemini sun has a lesson to learn in this lifetime. And the lesson is, can they bring these disparate parts together? And can they be accountable for those disparate parts? I think every sign has its kind of, how do I say this? It's kind of karmic yoke in some ways. Can the individual overcome the karmic yoke of that sign? And I think that's part of the transcendent piece. So she's got Moon in Gemini, which is interesting because, you know, a lot of people know she's like tweeted openly that she's an MK Ultra person. She's got like 8 multiples or something like that. Which, by the way, I actually believe. I mean, she sounds very, very hip to her own process, right? But what's interesting about the multiple stuff, and I have to do this with her, I'd have to go back and look at maybe the chronology of her life and her chart, but right around 25, 26, that's when the programming begins to break down. That's when people really, like, you know, lose their shit. Like, look what happened to Britney Spears right around that time. She's shaving her head and talking like an English woman. Do you remember that? Crazy stuff. Amy Winehouse. You know, is Amy Winehouse a multiple? Maybe. Was he MK trauma? Again, she dies before her 27th birthday under very unusual circumstances. So you would think that Roseanne would have already gone through it. Maybe she did. I don't know what was going on in Roseanne's life when she was 26 years old, but maybe she did go through that. But here she is, 60, 65, trying to untangle and put things back together. Moon opposite Moon. This is what was going on. The full moon was on her Mercury. Mercury in what sign? Sagittarius. And then she had the moon opposition. And you can even see it. She had 2 tweets, right? Gemini, 2 tweets that got her ass in trouble. And the first one, again, was the tweet about Soros, which in a lot of ways is like if she just stopped there, that would have been great. Because people would say, wow, maybe this Soros guy really is a Nazi. You know, it's like, wow, right? But if she didn't, and of course she had to deal with the other stuff. What's also interesting about Gemini is how a person could be, and this is the moon, right? This is the emotions. It's already opposite Mercury and already opposite Venus in her chart. So she's got that moon opposition going on. It's also in conjunct Neptune. Oh boy, man. So those are the hard pieces for the moon. The not so difficult piece for the moon is the trine to Aquarius on the ascendant. So when she's on emotionally, she can be really on and channel, you know, this Gemini moon through the ascendant. And she's got Mars here in Capricorn. Guess who else has Mars in Capricorn? Mr. Tommy Robinson, whose chart we just rectified. And where's her Mars? In the 12th house. This is pretty much where I put Tommy Robinson's rectified Mars. So very interesting here. Black Moon Lilith is in Virgo, and that's over there in the 7th house. Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, when you get into the 7th house, you get into all that kind of handler material. And there are people who think that Tom Arnold was her handler originally. But the Gemini moon, where I wanted to go with this, again, was a person who could be at one point in time, like if you look at her tweets are kind of insane in some ways, right? I mean, they really are. And so one of the things she says is breaking Jewish mind control is the hardest thing to do. Well, I'm like, well, I'm interested in that. You know, I'd be interested in breaking any kind of mind control. It was like, that's what she said. And then but then she goes on to like, talk about, you know, the Palestinian threat. And I mean, she's taking kind of like this interesting kind of like, you know, kind of more pro-Zionist sort of, you know, kind of, you know, emotional attachment. So I'm not sure where she's trying to break from, to be honest with you, right? Because she's clearly looking at, you look at her tweets, you'll see them. And she's like, you know, they're almost like pro-IDF in a lot of ways. It's very, you know, it's like, wow, it's very intense. But then she talks about like breaking free of, so that's like the moon in Gemini, especially when it's conflicted in opposition with Mercury. Now she's just coming out of a full moon. And she'd been born, 2 days earlier, day and a half earlier, she'd be born on the full moon with moon conjunct Jupiter. Wow. That would have been quite something. But clearly, there are things that I'm looking at for this chart are the shock value of Aquarius rising, true node in Aquarius, and then, of course, the sun up at the top of the chart at 11 degrees in Scorpio, opposing Jupiter retrograde, fortune rising and falling, right? Third house, what you say, what you speak, you know, how you think, and then the Jupiter retrograde, the Jupiter opposition, and then the full moon pretty much right on her Mercury, opposite Gemini moon. It's a really fascinating chart to look at and deal with. And I wouldn't want to be inside her body right now, to be honest with you. I bet you, and I've been a little critical about this whole process, and not necessarily about her, but I've been critical about the process that's propped her up as kind of a hero, a cultural hero, a truth warrior. I don't think that, I don't think it's probably the best thing, to be honest with you. I'm just being clear about it because there's a lot of collateral damage. And some people say, well, we'll take a few hits, you know, just so that people know that Valerie Jarrett is, you know, Mata Hari, or she's not a great person, or, you know, and some people say, well, this is like kind of where that's going. And maybe it will, because what we know about Sagittarius, and she's got Mercury and Venus and Sag, sometimes they can be outright lucky and they step in shit and they find like a diamond in a pile of shit. And that's I've seen Sag do this. So this may work out for Roseanne at some point, but right now I clearly would not want to be in her body. I bet it's absolute and utter Hades inside that body. Let me check in with the chat room and see what you guys think about that, what I just shared. Damn, dude, what's going to unfold for Roseanne? Pretty intense. Heck, Don Rickles, you say worse. I'm telling you. Yeah, Don, there are a lot of people. Well, here, I talked about this on Facebook. And one of the things that I said was there was how everybody remembers Howard Cosell, right? Howard Cosell, he basically referred to a player as a monkey, and it was Alvin Garrett, and he played for the Washington Redskins. Thanks for, hey, you're welcome. No, connect. And Alvin Garrett played for the Washington Redskins, and it was a Monday night game, and Howard Cosell said that Joe Gibbs wanted to turn that little monkey loose, and that got him fired. Howard Cosell never worked again. But what's interesting about that is that he also used the same expression for another player by the name of Mike Adamle, who played for the New York Jets. And Mike Adamle was kind of a diminutive player who was very quick. And he used this term monkey for players. Didn't matter what race they were, but people didn't understand that. Even though he said the same thing about Mike Adamle, all they heard was this reference to Alvin Garrett, and he was done. He was done. So the thing about Rickles, right? A lot of the stuff that Rickles did was a routine. People get away with things in a routine that they don't often get away with at times when they're on their Twitter page, flame throwing somebody. I saw Don Rickles in a movie the other night called Kelly's Heroes with Clint Eastwood. It's an unusual movie. And Don Rickles and Clint Eastwood together, it's an unusual pairing. Tonight's live stream brought to you by LaCroix Water. LaCroix. Refreshing. Bill Hicks got away with a lot. Absolutely. You're the one guy, it was like Lenny Bruce. He died. Lenny Bruce died for all the other comic sins. That's what he did. Lenny Bruce had to do time and all that stuff. But once Lenny Bruce crossed that threshold. Yeah, Paul, you're right. Monkey at that time often meant agile and athletic. And this is what Howard Cosell said. This is exactly what Howard Cosell said. But it cost him his job. So if it cost Howard Cosell his job, this is back in the 80s. How do you think that would play moving forward? It didn't really play too well, did it? So look, I hope Roseanne sorts her shit out. I really do, right? Even though I don't think she's like the truth warrior that everybody's like trying to push her to the front with, Alex Jones. I don't think she's quite like that. But I really hope she gets her head together and sorts this stuff out. I do. I really do. I don't wish Roseanne Barr any ill will at all. In fact, I hope she gets better. Drinking some fluoridated water here. Well, we got our little fluoride thing going on tomorrow night. All right. So if you guys haven't gone to my webpage, go to my webpage, check out my webpage, because I've got 2 charts on my webpage, robertphoenix.com. And I've already put them together, so you don't have to go through Astro Deans to do that whole thing. And what we're going to look at is the summit, the upcoming summit for this meeting. If it's going to go off, right? If this summit is going to go off, it's going to be on the 15th, and it's going to be in Singapore. Okay. So yeah, Paula, I'll report next week when we do the live stream next week. So go to my website. I'm going there right now, and I'm going to look at these charts, and you'll see I've got a nice stylized, posterized image of Kim Jong-un, who has the most bizarre head and hairline and hairdo, I think, of any human I've ever seen. And Trump might be a close second. I mean, the battle of the hair, Wow. The here and now. This is going to be an interesting one. Okay. So here's what I did. Again, I put this for the summit, June 15th, and it's at 10 a.m. Excuse me, 10 a.m. in Singapore. And I'm just trying to get a handle on the planets and where the planets are. So one of the things that I noticed is that if we put this right around 10 a.m., Leo is going to be on the ascendant of this summit, which means that we can expect probably some degree or level of pomp and circumstance. Like, I don't think it's going to be hidden and tucked away in some underground bunker in Singapore. Trump is a Leo rising, and he's going to make a big deal out of being there. He's going to want the whole world to see him in this moment, provided we get to this moment. We got 12 days, and a lot can happen in 12 days, okay? If that's the case, Venus has just gone into Leo at 1 degree. Like, well, went into Leo, goes into Leo the day before, but it's really early. So what we're going to have is we're going to have Venus on the ascendant, which means that there are going to be, at the very least, 2 people, Trump and Kim, who are really going to vie for attention with this Leo rising for the summit right around 10 o'clock in the morning, because I think that's when it'll start. If it starts any earlier, it's got to knock it back an hour. So we're going to have Cancer on these. So I'm going to go around 10 because I think that that's probably a reasonable time. So I'm looking at 10 o'clock. And when we get there, we'll look at it and maybe see what the actual time was. We'll compare the two. It's an interesting exercise, to say the least. But let's play with this time. So we have Leo on the ascendant. There's that true node. It's right there. And again, pomp, circumstance, maybe style over substance. Let's go across the other side of the chart. What do we see? Well, there's Mars in Aquarius. So what do we have over here is if there are 2 people working together during this moment in time with Mars in Aquarius, might be very effective, right? Because when we have Mars on the descendant in chart, so let's say you have Mars on your descendant or in your 7th house, I would say that it's really good for you to work hand in glove with your partners. So if you're in a marriage, at the very least, doing something physical and working with your partner is essential with Mars in the 7th house. You can take it to another level and actually do work with your partner with Mars in the 7th house. Now, here's what you need to remember about Mars. If you do not use Mars, if you're not active with Mars, Mars will then begin to become unpredictable, and you're going to deal with the energy that you're not using. So it's not like use it or lose it. It's not quite like that. It's more like use it or get used by it or something along those lines, right? So here we have Mars in Aquarius. First of all, in Aquarius, right, actively moving towards some kind of Aquarian kind of reconciliation, right? It's like a high-minded, make the world a better place. And here's the deal with Korea, though. North Korea is a bizarre place, totally bizarre place. And I'm going to get into this when I get to the moon, right, in the 12th house. So now what's interesting is, and I haven't talked about it, is Moon, who is the president of South Korea. He's going to be over there hanging out in the 7th house. So if this thing does go down, he could be a very key player. It probably already has been as part of this process goes. And I don't know if his sun is conjunct Mars, but I think it's close. So he would be kind of a trigger person or point person. While the other 2 guys are probably in the 1st house vying for some kind of, dominance and authority with Leo on the ascendant. Certainly Trump will be, because it shares his ascendant, right? But the thing about Mars, which is interesting here, is that it's in conflict with Uranus and with Jupiter. So we have a square. We have a Mars square with Uranus and Jupiter. So this is the Mars-Uranus square is challenging. Now, what is the big deal? What is the big deal around all? Well, it's nukes, right? Provided he has nukes, provided he has nukes, the United States wants him to ship all of his nukes off before they do anything. Well, he's not going to do that because he knows what happened to Libya. So if he has any kind of weaponry that at the very least can give him an edge or keep them from just, steamrolling his little country, he's probably going to want to keep it, provided he is who he is and the country itself is what it is. And that's a whole other issue that we might be able to get into, probably will. Okay. But look at what's at the highest part of the chart. It's Uranus. It's Uranus in the ninth house. Foreign governments, right? Foreign governments, countries, distant lands, the ninth house, law, creating law. And what's Uranus? Well, Uranus is, uranium and Pluto, plutonium. This is the stuff of nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, hydrogen bombs, right? So we're dealing with this Uranian kind of entity at the highest part of the chart. So it's actually a really important aspect here. So what they're going to be trying to do is take that Mars, square it off against Uranus, negotiate. That's going to be a big point of negotiation. Now, Jupiter is squaring Mars. So when we get into that Jupiter-Mars square, and it's kind of, what is it? It's like 8 degrees. Is that right? Yeah. Mars is at 8, 14, 6 degrees. Sometimes people deliver more than they can or will with a Jupiter square to Mars. That's a tricky square, to be honest with you. And Jupiter's retrograde. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to go backwards and go back and go back to pre-1980s when theoretically you started to get all this stuff. But that Jupiter-Mars square is, to me, it's like kind of offering more or asking more or offering more that can actually be delivered with a Jupiter-Mars square. So again, on the face value of this whole thing, Mars can be problematic. And look at the opposition with Venus. What's going to be more important? Is it going to be pomp and circumstance and, who's got the bigger button? Or is it going to be Mars over here in the 7th house working towards some kind of, who knows, unilateral thing and defusing that tension? All right. Well, what about Korea? What about North Korea? I'm interested in the moon here in the 12th house because it's hidden and it's tucked away, and the moon generally represents home. Now, in this case, it could be the United States, since we're a Cancerian country, perhaps, and maybe North Korea is Gemini. I don't know in this case, but I'm really looking at this whole idea of the moon. Let's take it away from kind of the geographical and historical context. It's the moon, and it represents a home, and it's hidden and tucked away. And what are we talking about here? We're not talking about the United States. We're not talking about the United States as a home. We're talking about North Korea as a home, right? Or their home. And when it's tucked away in the 12th house, and even if we change the time a little bit, let's say we made it a little earlier, that moon likely would still be in the 8th house, or if not closer to the ascendant, still in the 8th house. So there's a mystery around the moon here. Like, what is the home? What's that home all about? And what are we really kind of getting into and talking about? So what we have on the other side is we have Saturn. Saturn's opposing the moon. So we have this imposition of external order trying to define this thing that's hidden and tucked away with the moon. Mercury's in Cancer. It's a wide conjunction and sitting right outside of the 12th house, which means that we're trying to get some information about this from statesmanship and the pageantry and the theater or whatever it is, right? That the Grand Trine actually works. The aspect that I'm a little concerned about is the Venus-Mars opposition and the Mars square to Uranus and the Mars square to Neptune, which could be, especially Mars square to Jupiter. The Mars square to Jupiter could be offering more that can be delivered. The other aspect here that I'm a little concerned about is the Sun square to Neptune. And anytime we get into Sun-Neptune squares, we're talking about leakage, that there's compromise, or there's something about the energy that's being deflated. Right? It's being Neptune's literally taking the energy out of the sun with the Neptune. It's delusional. We're not really seeing the full picture. That's another aspect about this summit that I think is interesting, that might be posed to us in one direction or one way, but it's really probably something a bit different with that Sun-Neptune square. So let's get into Trump. How does Trump fare with this? Well, I would say that Trump's got an astrologer, because this summit, it happens, I think a day before his birthday. We got a Sun-Sun conjunction. Look at that. And then the true node conjunct the sun, 11th house. This is this is Trump's shining moment with the Sun-Sun conjunction, correct? All right, look at the ascendant. Well, right there on the true node, there's Trump's Pluto, right on the ascendant. So he's going to do his best to implement with asset that they want to roll up on the ascendant, on the true node. His Mars is in the first house. He'll be in a quite opposite Mars in Aquarius, but fixed signs and opposition, but not quite classically opposite. More squares here than there were in the other chart, correct? Even Trump's sun squaring Neptune. What's his role in all of this, right? Very interesting. There's only one trine going on, and that's actually that's a sextile, right? Yeah, it's a sextile. There's the Mars trine to Neptune, and then there's the I think that's really the only classic trine. Well, I guess it's it's classically mathematically a trine, but there's a Mars Uranus trine there too, and then the sextile between Mars and the Sun. After that, everything is just a network of squares and hammering things out, and some very interesting inconjuncts. It's going to be interesting, this summit, but I'm telling you right now, it's all lined up for Trump, and he is going to want to win. Now he could kill it too, with Pluto on the ascendant, Pluto on the true node. He could kill this thing, right? He could actually leave this summit without getting it done. That would be a very Plutonian thing. That would be very dramatic, and that all of a sudden the world would be on pins and needles, right? With all these squares here, that may not be impossible, to be quite honest with you. But I think it's going to get done, and I think he's really going to want to try to come out and win this thing, right? And if he does, you won't hear the end of it. That Leo rising, he'll be chirping for a long time about how great this was, and the press will line us, and of course on the left we'll get a whole different story, but I don't want to get into that. Let's check in with people here over in the old chat room, seeing how they're doing. There's a Genie 7. I'm a Leo Sun, Capricorn Ascendant, and Capricorn Moon. So okay, 8th house, and very young, 66-year-old, 67 is still left. Good. Good. We got to keep things light and have fun with this stuff. Hey, Jeannie, I'm a Cancer, Gemini rising 67 too. Look at that. We got little friendships going on in the chat room. How cool is that? Second freeze. Thought it just hit me. If it was offline. Anyone else lose the live stream? Okay, we back. Can you connect here? Connect. Hello from Vietnam. Hello, Min Huang. Nice to have you here. Jeannie, okay, here we go. I just type all kinds of things and come up. Yeah, who knows what's going on with my live stream. You are fine now. I did, but all good now. Wow, interesting stuff. Okay, yeah, we just froze up a few times. Well, that happens, right? Freeze happens. So what do you guys think of this summit? That chart's kind of interesting, huh? It looks like it's going to be a bit of a pissing match. But keep your eye on Moon. The Moon, the guy from South Korea. He's going to be an interesting influence. But also, the outside, you think Trump? I think Trump will walk out too. I do. I think he's going to walk out. He'll either get it done, because Pluto's extreme, right? It'll either happen, it'll be the big hero, or he'll walk out with Pluto on the ascendant. So we called it here tonight, right? We called it here tonight. I'm going to get into the chart of the moment for a little bit, and then I'm going to get out of here, because people like to get their rest, and I don't want to. I'm trying to make my videos a little bit shorter, just a tad. Okay, what do we got here? Let's see the chart of the moment. It was the chart of the moment. Moon in Aquarius. So we got a nice sun-moon trine going on. I like that. You feel the flow, the sun-moon trine? We can get all like talky and slightly detached and rise above it all. The Aquarian moon is a very interesting moon. I've talked about it before. It's one of the more interesting moons. It allows us to be at our best objective and detached. And I wouldn't say at our worst, but in the extreme, voyeuristic. People who have Aquarian moons, a little voyeuristic. Let's just say they like to watch. Okay, this is true. It's an eccentric moon and a quirky moon too. Very quirky. Like the things that turn people, things, you know, if you've got an Aquarian moon, what turns you on is different than other people. Trust me. Just that's the way it is. Mercury, by the way, is going to be conjuncting the sun and moving ahead of the sun. So that's actually really, really important now. As it begins to move ahead of the sun, we're going to see another side here of Mercury. It's going to emerge. And communication. You think communication was big last week? Here's the thing about last week. Because Mercury was behind the sun, look at what we were dealing with. It was like, you know, wow, you know, here I am. Experience, intensity, sun, right? And then it's Mercury. Like, well, gee, I think I'd apologize for that. To all my sponsors and the people at TBS, I really apologize for what I did because it was really disgusting and I had no right. Please don't leave my show because I really, really want to keep my show. That's Mercury behind the sun. Like, yeah, you know, Ivanka, you could, right? Mercury. Oh, I'm sorry I said that. You know, Roseanne, right? Please run my show back. That's Mercury behind the sun. You know, when Mercury moves forward, guess what's going to happen? People are going to think a little more. Should I really say that? Because it might affect my image, the sun, right? We got Mars in Aquarius, which we know. A lot of air. There's a lot of air out there. Venus is at, let's see, just getting ready to go into second decan. Actually, it'll go into third decan in about 2 days. So that'll put it in the Piscean decan. I like that decan for Cancer, to be honest with you. It's sweet. It's sweet and spiritual. It's spiritually sweet. Let's see, what else do we have? Jupiter, Scorpio retrograde. That goes back to 13 degrees, and then it moves forward again. Saturn's retrograde. Got a lot of retrograde action. Pluto retrograde. Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter. Those are big planets to be retrograde. Pretty significant planets, to be honest with you. Look at that. Neptune is up to 16 degrees. Speaking of retrograde, it'll go back. The river running backwards with Neptune retrograde. And Chiron's still fresh at 2 Aries. It'll go retrograde too by the end of the year. And we're in the final decan of the true node in Leo, but it lasts a while. Like it's at 7 degrees. But between now and then, meaning then when it goes into Cancer, it's like that's in January. So the true node is going to cover 7 degrees now in Leo between now and January. How about that? It's interesting because it goes forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. You know what else I put in? I put in some fixed stars. Didn't I do that? I should have done that. I had a chart with some fixed stars. I'm just going to put that in there. I'm going to do that with, I'll redo that. Because there was one fixed star that I thought was interesting. I think it might have been either Polaris or Regulus. You know, Regulus is right on Trump's ascendant, which explains a lot. So the week ahead, you know, we're starting the week off with that Aquarian moon, detached, kind of easygoing, breezy going. Certainly won't be anything like the that Sag moon. It's already crossed over Mars, right? So that Moon Mars intensity from would have been what would that have been like last night, yesterday, that Moon Mars intensity, that conjunction. Shocking emotions. How many people raise your hand if you had or experienced a shocking emotion yesterday? Did anybody experience a shocking emotion yesterday? Neptune is killing you. You could have my Neptune's on my south node. Did anybody in the last 24 hours get blindsided? Laugh aloud. Of course I did. Hand raised. Yeah, me too. You got lost hiking alone far away. There's Jasper. Yes, there's Jasper. I got totally blindsided yesterday. Very intense. Yes, you could see you could see Mars Moon together. That's correct. Sue's proud raises so there you go. Moon Mars conjunction yesterday in Aquarius. Shocking emotional effect. All right. Yes, my husband and I never argue. We did though. There you go. I did big time. That was Chris. It's been wild, man. Well, it's been great tonight. Do you chart Eros? Sometimes I chart Eros. So, sometimes I play with the asteroids and the fixed stars. Was looking for 2 million Forest Fen treasure. Oh, no kidding. Didn't find it. So don't mind sharing the story now. Okay. Reminder, request to chart Jordan Peterson. Just why you don't mention the part of fortune aspect. Is it not? It's okay. When you get into the part of fortune, like it's not just the part of fortune. There are all these other parons. I think the part of fortune is good. I think the part of fortune to me is almost like an extended Jupiter in a lot of ways. Jordan Peterson. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be co-hosting with Emily for Randy. He's going to be gone for like about a month or so. So I'll be doing an off-planet radio as a co-host with Emily. And we're going to talk about the dark web. We're going to talk about like, MK Ultra and sports, but also the dark web. And Jordan Peterson is going to come up in that conversation. And I'll probably do a chart for Jordan Peterson as well. Okay, thank you again, everybody. I really, really appreciate all of you coming to the chat here on Sunday night. And you can check out my website and get a reading. I also have a great course, by the way. I have a really, really great course. So here's what I want to do. And I'm going to make this fair. Okay, I'm going to make this fair. So I have a course. It's a 16-hour course. And what I'm going to offer, which is something I haven't really done, is I'm going to offer a 1-hour reading for anybody that wants to download will purchase my course. And if you bought my course in the last 30 days, that offer extends to you as well. Okay, so there you go. If you want to study astrology, I've got a great 16-hour course, and you'll get an hour reading along with that. Plus, you'll get your chart